Hello and welcome to the Hollywood Knitter Podcast. My name is Allison and I'll be your host. I'm recording on Thursday, February 25th, 2016, and it has been a little while since I've shared a little bit of my life with you. I have a pretty decent amount to talk about, so let's get right started. First up, FOs. I have two FOs. One are a present for Valentine's Day socks for my boyfriend. I finished them the February 13th, the day before Valentine's Day. I was finishing them on the train as we went to Chicago, and I love them, so I have two. These are, the yarn is Lantinium Machina from Finland in the Helm's Deep colorway, which is, I did it as kind of a present. I was specifically going for kind of Valentine's Day colors, but not too over the top red. And I really like this online. So I purchased it, and the sock is just a simple broken rib sock. Toe up all the way, and fish lips kiss heel. And I modified the numbers a little bit for him, so I did a little bit more on the foot and then made it a little narrower in the leg because he's got skinny ankles and legs. And it came out wonderfully, and I was so happy. And he's already worn them. These have already been washed. I actually he's worn them twice since I finished them. So I've already washed them. So I put them on the blocker so they would look a little less worn. But actually, I was really pleased with how they washed because they actually felt a little scratchy in the ball when I was knitting them, and I was like, okay, probably after the first wash they will soften up a bit, and they did. And these are a wool nylon blend, a traditional sock blend. And so yeah, I was really pleased with them. They took me about a month to do, but it was a deadline knitting, and I usually don't do really well with deadline knitting at all. So I was really pleased to finish it. And I'm really excited that he likes to wear them, and he wears them no matter what. I have 3 pairs for him right now. My Christmas socks I made for him, these Valentine's Day ones, and then another pair of socks that were actually a little too big for me. And I said, hey, do you want them? They fit his feet. He's like, yeah. He reaches for those first now. And so he wears socks every day, and he works in construction and wears boots and stuff, and he reaches for him every day. So he is a totally worthy of sock knitting, and it is a project that he will wear. So I definitely see myself purchasing some manly sock yarn, or manly-ish, he'll do colors, and knitting him socks in the future because my drawer is full. So I'm just really excited to have someone who appreciates them as much as I do, so I can make more socks for him. So that was the first one I finished. And another project I finished, which you guys haven't seen or heard about, is the Slouchy Ombre hat, and I can't remember who it's by. It was a free pattern on Ravelry, and this is done the pattern calls for DK weight, and I happen to have some leftover DK Mad Tosh, in a Robin's Red and I think Antique. And I was, looking, this is one of the projects I put in my Ravelry when I was looking at the beginning of the year for projects to put in my queue that would use up some of my stash yarn. So this is the hat. I think it's going to be for me. I like it. It was supposed to be slouchy, but either my gauge was too tight or I didn't do it long enough. I did it per pattern exactly, and I think in order for it to be slouchy, it would have had to do a little more in length, and I was happy with just following the pattern, and I'm not really a huge slouchy fan, so I was okay. I really didn't do any modifications to it except at the top of the head. It called for some, I don't know, I actually did it entirely per pattern, and I just didn't like the way the crown decreases went, so I ripped it all back, and I just did my own simple K2 together, knit 9, and so I have 10 wedges, and decrease down, I'll have about a third, and then I decrease every row. Very simple, standard hat crown decrease, and I liked it a lot better than the one that the pattern called for, which had like a double decrease, so it decreased much faster, and it just looked kind of weird and pointed when I tried it on. But I started this hat on the train on the 13th, actually. I cast it on, I brought this with me and I knit almost all of it while we were away for that weekend. So on the train, and then I actually finished the first time I did the creases on the plane back, and then I ripped that out like 2 days later and finished it a few days after we get back to finish my crown. So you can see it's kind of a gathered 10. And I really like how it looks. Oh, let me show you the inside, because stranded is always beautiful. Here's all my stranding. Ooh. And I don't treat it like a traditional, because I am a thrower, not a picker. But when I do two, I can usually do a modified version of it. So I'm able, I don't know why. So in theory, I could definitely probably teach myself how to pick. I just don't want to because I like the way I knit. But when I do a two color, I can do that. And I'm really happy with the floats. There's no really pulling. And I think it's beautiful the way it goes from the dark to the light. And I like that effect. So I'm really happy with it. And again, more out of the stash. I think I used, I don't know, I think I used about a little more of the red than the antique, about 60 or 70 yards of the red and then 40 of the antique. So I actually still have some of this left. And it's Mantosh, Merino TK, the TK weight, and you know, I love it. It's a great yarn, great colors. The last hat I did was also a striping hat, and when I washed it and blocked it, it did bleed a little, so I will put a color catcher for the red to try to prevent it when I wash it. But honestly, I don't wash my hats very often, so I'm not too worried about it. I just won't soak it very long, and I'll throw a color catcher in there, and that will be good enough. So yeah, so those are my two FOs, a hat and a pair of socks. I feel very, very productive. That's productive for me. Whips. I have a sweater. I haven't touched it since I last talked to you. I have the other project that I brought with me in my travels was my Lefty by Martina Behm. And I did get some done on that. Oh, I stopped in the middle. I am kind of notorious. I will stop in the middle of a row, and especially if I'm on circulars, and just pull it like this so they don't come out. I know some people are always like, no, never stop in the middle of the row because it increases your chances of your stitches getting dropped, which is true, and I've had it happen. But it's just more convenient to me, and I just like the fact that I don't have to wait. Like, I don't have to have enough time to do a full row, or it can be in the middle of something and I'm not sure how much time I have, and then I just put it down. But anyways, here it is so far. I think I have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 19 leaves. And I have, let's see how much of the gray I have left. I have plenty of the colors. I still have a pretty decent amount of gray. So I'm going to keep going till I'm almost out of gray. And I think this is going to go into the gift box. I'm not sure. I don't know. The shape is not really me, though the colors really are. Purple, orange, green. Those are my 3 colors. So we'll see when it gets done. This is just my traveling project. I moved this to my purse because it's pretty mindless knitting, except for the leaves, and even then, they're pretty fast. And I got a little bit knit here and there. But it's been on the needles for a while, so I'm probably going to focus on it soon because it's been on there too long and I want to finish it off. The other big project that I'm going on is February is almost over. And so as soon as I got back from my trip and I finished all my socks, I picked up for month 2 of my scrappy sock yarn blanket in the linen stitch. Remember, I was crazy enough to have a big ball of sock leftovers, and I'm doing 1 row in linen stitch across a lot of stitches. I think I measured it, or I kind of did it, and it's going to be roughly 55 inches wide, and these suckers take me a long time. Well, it probably takes me about 20 minutes to do 1 row. And I'm almost done with my second 3 inches. So remember, I had this plan of doing 3 inches a month, so this would be a 2-year project to get to 72 inches. So I am almost done with the 3 inches for this month. I think I have probably like 3 or 4 more rows. And then I will put it down until March, which is only next week. And I'll pick it up again and do 3 more inches and then put it down, because it seems to be taking me about a week and a half to 2 inches of my evening knitting and weekend knitting to get this done. And I pretty much only do this when I'm doing that, like at home. I have my travel project, and this is pretty much the only project I do at home, unless like last weekend I was knitting on it so much and wasn't having good posture. I was kind of like lying around on the TV. So after a while, I was actually getting a little pain. So I switched over to a heavier weight project. Oh, and this just has all sorts of sock yarn scraps. You can kind of see the edge. I have lots of colors. I have solids and multicolors and here and there, and I'm just kind of pulling them out as I go, and I'm really liking how it's coming out. I think it's really beautiful, all of the colors. So I'm really pleased with it. It is going to be my forever project. You will see it a lot more. So that is done. And then the last project that I actually cast on for is the cat is called, and this was a pattern that was purchased, The Courtyard by Melissa Thompson. And again, this was one of the hats that I was looking for, something to use with stash, and it kind of appealed to me, and it was in my queue. And so I actually bought it right before I left on vacation and brought the yarn. I wasn't sure which hat I was going to cast on for, this or the ombre, and I ended up going with the ombre over this one. But this is kind of what it looks like. It's a striped with a traveling cable that kind of goes up on the side. And I'm doing mine in Plucky leftovers that I had. And it's kind of hard to see because, again, I have it in the middle of a row. I'll just pull it and we'll go that way. Yeah, and I'll fix it after. So I'm doing it in, I think it's Jack of All Trades, and I forget what the blue is called. But it's interesting because the traveling rib is a stockinette, and then it's garter. So you can kind of see it going up, and I've only done the brim, and I only have a few more rows. Once I actually keep working on it, it will go fast, but it's kind of just my in-between project right now, and I'm happy with it so far. I am itching to cast on more projects, which means I need to finish my lefty and this hat so that I can, and the sweater. The sweater is on my list for this weekend since I have to work on my 2 sleeves. So I can finish all of those so I can cast on, I think, for another big project and a small project. So I need another pair of socks as soon as I finish my fingering weight. I'm also thinking of maybe doing a lace project. I have some lace projects in my queue. I'm thinking of pulling them out, which would be another long-term project. But we'll see. That is all I have in the knitting right now. But I do have quite a bit to talk about in recent travels and gossip and things like that. So let's talk about, well, a little bit of gossip. You can tell I chopped my hair off right before I went on vacation. I went in with this idea and didn't quite get what I wanted, but it's growing on me. I got the length I wanted, but the layers that were put in were a little, they weren't weird, but you know, you can never do your hair the way the hairdresser does, or at least I can't. So it looked beautiful coming out of the salon, and then when I air dry it like I usually do, it went a little poofy and a little wavy. So that's kind of what I'm embracing. I actually have to put like some product in my hair and then let it go. But I'm happy with it for the most part. And it's only hair, it will grow out. What else? So my recent trip that I did was my train trip. I was so excited about this trip, and it was awesome. It really was. So we left on Friday night from LA Union Station, Los Angeles, which is downtown. Not that far from my house. I live about 4 miles from it. We came home, got all ready. We packed a suitcase. We shared a suitcase and then had just a carry-on bag. And we packed some things, some drinks, and then a few games, and then our clothes. And we Ubered over to Union Station. And because we were in a sleeper car, we got to hang out in their Premier Lounge, which was just kind of a lounge away from all of the craziness of downstairs, and you had a few free snacks. And then when it was time for the train to get loaded, they actually put you on a cart and like took you over to the train directly, so you didn't have to walk at all. I didn't expect that, so that was kind of cool. So they took our luggage and everything, and we didn't have to walk to the train platform. It took us right to our train that had our sleeper car, because we had gotten what they call a couchette, which is a tiny room that is about 3.5 feet wide with 2 chairs facing each other. At night, those 2 chairs slide down, and they have a thin mattress with a blanket that they put on top of it. So one person sleeps there. Above it, they have a bunk that comes down and then has a mattress and a blanket, and another person sleeps there. So you have, and then you have a door, and you have some curtains that kind of prevent other people from seeing in, and then you have like a large picture window to look out. So we got on there, and we had a few other people were there. It was actually a pretty full, most of the sleeper for most of the ride. The train overall was actually kind of empty. They said that normally they have two full sleeper cars, and the sleeper cars have, I think, 15 of these kind of couchette rooms that will sleep 2 people, and then they have some larger rooms that would sleep a few more. And they usually have 2 cars of these, but they only had one. They had a dining car, and then they only had, I think, 1 general seating car. So it was a pretty light train. So we left Los Angeles and we went down through Fullerton. It was already dark, so it really wasn't too much to see. We kind of just got acquainted with the train, and then we had dinner for the first time. We had dinner on the train, and that was included in our ticket. And the way they do dinner is they seat you with other people. So we were seated with this cool single guy who was using the train. He's from Seattle, and he was taking the train from, I think he had business in LA, and he was taking it out to Chicago to meet up with some family and then stay there. And I think he was going to take the flyer train back. He'd done it before, so he had one of those couchette rooms to himself, and he was really cool. He worked for Funny or Die, if you're familiar with that website. It was great talking to him. It was fun, and then we went back to our room, and we kind of got settled in, and they have an attendant who was on with you the whole time, and her name was Peggy, and she was really fun and really nice, and she will put your beds down and make them for you. But I didn't want to come back from dinner, which is usually when she puts them down, if we still wanted to kind of sit upright. And so we actually managed to put them down ourselves when we wanted to a little while later. And I took the top bunk for the first night, and he was down below. And it was not bad. Like, the rocking motion didn't bother me. I had earplugs, so the noise didn't bother me. We had a few stops in the middle of the night, so I did sort of wake up when the train stopped and moved. The only thing about the top bunk is it's narrower, so it's a single bed size or a little smaller. There's not much headroom, like, maybe a foot or 2.5 feet above me. So it's not like you can sit upright. You'll slam your head. You kind of have to roll into the bed and lie flat. But I slept pretty well. And when we woke up, I woke up early with the sun rising because your sleep is off anyways. I think I woke up on the stop we stopped at 6 a.m. in Kingsman, Arizona. But we had a stop in Prescott, Arizona. And so I'd woken and was hanging out with my boyfriend in his bed. And he's like, oh, we got to play the Eagles song, So he put on the Eagles song, and we listened to it. And then we kind of watched going through the desert and the sun rising. And it was really beautiful. I really love the desert and that vista of seeing that. And so we went to early breakfast. It was open seating for breakfast, and we sat with another couple and had breakfast, and then came back and we watched some more of the world go by. We headed to they had an observation car that had comfy chairs and some tables, and so we actually brought like a game over there, and we played a board game that we brought. And then we went into Albuquerque, and this was kind of our longest stop. This is where they switch conductors and engineers, and they gas up the train and add water and etc. So we actually got in there early, so we had about an hour and 15 minutes in Albuquerque. So we took ourselves for a walk around the downtown area, which didn't really have much to sell. And I've been in Albuquerque. I know that there's actually nicer areas than where the train station was. But we did find a liquor store and get this really cool beer that we both know that is brewed in Albuquerque. And so we got a 4-pack of that and brought it back and had a beer, and then got back on the train and watched the desert kind of slowly sort of change over the afternoon. And we just I knit, and we listened to books, and, and played more games and kind of hung out. One thing I'll have to say about the train is that I normally do not eat 3 square meals a day. I usually don't eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And we did eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And then you also, even when we go out to eat, we usually split an entree. And then you felt like, because it was included, you guys both needed an entree. So I the first day I ate a little bit more. I had salad the next day. But definitely the meals were good. I mean, I wouldn't have wanted to pay the prices that were on the menu, because anyone from Coach could also come in and pay for a meal. That was a little pricey, but included in the cost of my ticket and kind of added in there. Definitely worth it. So we got through to the very edge of Colorado by the end of the day, and it was starting to get more mountainous, a little colder, and every so often you'll have the stops that are longer. They'll give you like 10 minutes, and so every time we had one of the stops, we got off to stretch our legs and kind of walk the platform and feel if it was cold or not. And then, so that's kind of just how we spent the day. It was just really relaxing. It was a great way to travel. All of the people are really friendly and really nice, the workers who are working on the train. And so we had the second night, which was Saturday night, and we did switch. So I was going to sleep down below and he was going to sleep up top. And he went to bed a little earlier than me, and I was reading a little bit, and then I finally went to sleep. And one of the things that he had said the first night that I really enjoyed is that he had left a little bit of the curtain open, and from the way he was lying, he could just see the stars. And of course, you're going through the middle of nowhere where it's very dark, so you could just see so many stars. So I was like, oh, I want to do that. I want to fall asleep looking at the stars. And I did for a little while. And then I've probably been sleeping about 20 minutes. And all of a sudden, I feel something, and I open my eyes, and there's like a foot in my face. And I was like, oh. And he's like trying to get down from the top bunk, which him getting up was a little comical. Him getting down, and he's just like, I can't sleep up there. I can't breathe. It's so hot. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, it wasn't that hot. He's like, I can't. He's like, let me sleep down here with you. And we tried that for about 5 minutes, and I was like, this isn't going to work. Like, I'd have to stay on my side the whole time for us both to fit on this little bed. I'm like, you know what? I didn't have a problem sleeping up top. Let me get back up there. So you get back up on the top bunk, and one of the other things it has straps that you kind of do the ceiling. So I guess if you were a nervous sleeper, I'm not really a big roller around, but it's conceivable. You couldn't actually roll off the bunk because there was this netting that would catch you. So I managed to finagle myself back up there and have another good night's sleep. The second night was not as smooth because a lot of what I learned afterwards from talking to different people, the quality of the tracks is a function of how smooth the ride is, which makes sense. And all of the tracks that Amtrak follows on are rented, or they belong to the freight trains. Then they kind of rent them to go on them. So the second night, the tracks go through Kansas and I think into Iowa, and they're just not in such great condition. So it was definitely a much rougher ride, but still didn't bother me. I was like kind of lulled to sleep, and I slept fine. And we get up the next morning, and that's kind of when the vista had changed. We were in farm country. We could definitely tell we're the Midwest. You started to see little dustings of snow, like little packs of areas where it snowed and it was still cold enough, like in the shadow where there was still snow cover, and that slowly changed. And then we were going into a snowstorm. Now I'd known, or I'd seen that it was going to be snowing, or was predicted to snow in Chicago. And it did. And we kind of went with the snowstorm. So in the morning it started to kind of and you could see where they'd gotten some snow, and then we finally hit the snowstorm around 9 a.m. And then we just were in snow the whole time. So we were going through these fields and these small towns that was just snowing. I thought it was beautiful. It was very different from the day before when we've been going through desert with clear blue skies. It was like 80 degrees out. And now we're into it's snowing out, and you have these fields covered in snow. So that was fun. Actually, the last time we got off the train, he's like, oh, I don't need a jacket. And I was looking outside. I'm like, I think you do. He's like, we've been able to kind of get off before because it wasn't that cold. And I'm like, I'm getting my jacket. And I got my jacket and I got off, and they were actually at the station that we stopped at. They were plowing and they were salting all of the areas where people were walking. And he got off for a second, and he's like, oh my gosh, it's cold. I can't handle this. I can't handle this. He is a Southern California boy. Born, raised, does not want to ever go, does not understand snow, doesn't understand why anyone would willingly live in snow or where it's cold. So we get into Chicago. We actually got in a little early. We got in about 3 o'clock. And we get off the train, and it's cold. And we walk through Union Station, and we intentionally went to the Grand Hall because it's a very old train station, and it had a huge great room, which I guess is under renovation because there wasn't that much in it, and there was a lot of things you could tell. They said they were under signs that said they were under renovation. But then we come out of the station, and it's snowing, and it's accumulating. It wasn't supposed to accumulate that much, and it didn't. It probably got about 2 well, probably about 3 inches by the end of the storm. But I was like, well, we can take our hotel that I had gotten us wasn't very far away. And I originally had planned on us walking. It was like 3/4 of a mile, then like 15-minute walk. I'm like, well, we can get a cab. He's like, no, because he's just one of those. He's like, no, let's walk it. I'm like, okay. So we're proceeded to like walk through Chicago in a snowstorm while pulling our luggage, and it's cold, and the only thing I forgot was my gloves, and I didn't anticipate it being quite that cold, so I could have used a thicker shawl too than the one I brought. But yeah, it was an adventure going through, and then we found our hotel, and we stayed at the Palmer Hotel, which is a gorgeous old hotel, and it's in the Chicago Financial District, over very close to the Art Institute and to the park, Olympic Park right there. And so we got there, and the lobby is gorgeous, gorgeous, old school, 1920s Art Deco lobby. And we got our room, and it's a big hotel. Our room was fine. The hotel is one of those that faces an interior courtyard. So we had one of those interior rooms, so no view or anything like that, but it was comfortable. You could tell it was an older hotel. The bathroom was very small, almost to the point where you feel like you're backing in. But the bed was very comfortable. It was updated. It was nice. And so we get in, and I was like, all right, I want to walk around. And he's like, it's snowing outside. And I said, I know, but we're in Chicago, and I wanted to go and, walk around a little. I think it was probably 4 o'clock by then. I'm like, I want to go see the Bean, because he has been to Chicago. And I said, oh, have you been to the Bean? He's like, what's the Bean? And I'm like, oh, we got to go to the Bean. Everybody's got to go to the Bean. And it was so close to where we were staying. So we got bundled up again and went out, and it was snowing a little harder. There were people out though, because it's Valentine's Day. It's a Sunday. There's always tourists in Chicago. So we walked over and we took pictures and played in the snow a little bit. And, he was a little grumpy, but not that much, and taking pictures and walking around. And we were going to walk over to the lake, and then the easy pathway over I forgot what that road that goes right around there, that busy road, was closed. And I was like, you know what? It's really cold over there. And it was the kind of cold that I had not brought just that one extra layer I needed. And so what was happening is I could have used like a set of tights under my jeans. So my thighs were getting frozen. The rest of me had enough layers, but that was, starting to get where you can't feel it. So we're probably out for an hour, and then I'm like, let's go get a drink. And there I found Yelp. I find a lot of my stuff on Yelp. We went to this great place called The Gauge, which is right across from the park. And I thought it'd be really busy for Valentine's Day. It was, but we were able to sit at the bar and have a drink and have some appetizers, which ended up serving as our dinner. And then we decided that we were going to go to a club that night. And so we stayed there for a little while. Then we went back to the hotel just to kind of change and figure out how we were going to go. And then we took the train a little bit uptown, and we went to a blues club. I can't remember the name of the blues club, but we got there right when it opened at 8, and nobody went on till 9. And we sort of picked this because they didn't sell tickets in advance. The cover was only $10. And the person they had playing that night, they had a main band, and then they had a woman singer. And I just love like a really good blues singer, and she was excellent. And we ended up staying there most of the night, and it was full of tourists, and I ended up being one of the only ones dancing initially. I was tapping my feet and moving, and I'm like, why is nobody in this place dancing? And then finally this gentleman asked me to dance, and we ended up talking to him for the night. He was in town for a conference from Wisconsin, an older gentleman whose wife didn't come, and he just like, yeah, I saw you dancing, and I was gonna ask you to dance, but I was afraid to offend your man, is what he said. And he's like, no, he didn't feel like dancing, though at one point we did. But then she got everyone more dancing, so we had a good time. We stayed there till about 12:30, and then we were kind of done. We've been out for a while and had a few drinks, so we came out, and it had stopped snowing, but the snow had accumulated, and we ended up walking back. It was only like, I don't know, 1.5 miles, 2 miles. And so it was very surreal walking through Chicago at 12:30 in the morning in an area that isn't heavily residential anyway, so there wasn't a lot of people out on snowy sidewalks. It was cool. Excuse me. Thought I was going to sneeze, but no. And then we got back to the hotel, slept the next day. We got up, had some breakfast around the corner, then took the L to Midway and made it to our flight, had the Southwest back, really easy, and then took the Uber home. And so we were home by 6:30 on Monday night. It was a great trip. I think I've converted my boyfriend. He's not a big airplane traveler, and he's like, I would take the train. And I really enjoyed it too. Definitely a slower way to travel. If you're in a hurry to get anywhere, not the way to go. But if you're interested in the journey itself or a lot of beautiful views, it's a great way to travel. And I think it'd be good with kids too, especially if you get a sleeper car, because some of them are larger and you have some place to go, and it was fun. One of the gentlemen we met actually is someone who travels by himself he said between 6 and 10 times a year on the train. And so I was talking, I'm like, oh, really? And he was from Omaha, and he was actually heading back. He had done a trip from Omaha to DC to LA, and then LA to Chicago to Omaha. And that's just what he does for his vacation. And I said something, and he's like, oh yeah, my wife. And I'm like, oh, you're married? Your wife doesn't come? She's like, no, she doesn't like to take train trips. So he travels by himself. Excuse me. But I asked him, how long have you been traveling by train? And he's like, oh, about 30 years. It's like, this is kind of the way I like travel. And I said, okay, what are your top trips for train travel? And he said the Coast Starlight, which is the train that I've actually heard about that goes from LA up to Seattle along the coast. It's supposed to be beautiful. It's, I think, a 32-hour trip. And I thought about doing that for this trip, and then I decided I want to do Chicago. And then he said the other one is a Canadian one that goes across Canada. It's like a 5-day trip. And so I want to look into that too. That would be awesome. So that was our Chicago trip. We didn't have pizza, which was sad. We did hear some blues, which was good. And definitely want to go back. Probably not go back in the wintertime. It was a little cold, and it was good in the snow for like less than 24 hours. But if we'd been there over the weekend where it was that cold, whew, it definitely, I've forgotten how much cold limits you from doing things if you are not used to it. Then, what else? Came home, I've been working a lot. I have a lot of work. I'm done traveling for a while, though I'm preparing for my next crazy trips. I didn't go to Stitches West because I was traveled out. I just needed to be home for the weekend, and I had some errands I had to do. I had to take the cat to the vet and all this stuff, so I just decided no Stitches West for me this year, and no Virginia Beach. Hi everyone from Virginia Beach, I missed you guys, and all the people at Stitches West that I usually see too. It was sad. I saw the Instagram photos and I was like, oh, yay. But I am planning all my upcoming travels, and my next trips are the Northern California Knitting Retreat in April. And then 2 weeks later, I go to Austin for my girlfriend's trip. I may try to squeeze in a yarn store there. We'll see. And then the weekend after that, I'm going to Maryland Sheep and Wool. Yay! And so that's exciting. I got my ticket for that. And then a few weeks after that, I go to Zombie Apocalypse, and then I have to plan some trips for my niece and nephew to come see me, and my big Hawaii trip, and all this other stuff. So I've been focusing on April right now, and I've got most of those plane tickets bought and out of the way, so we should be good. But all is well. I've been knitting. I've been enjoying house. I'm going to enjoy being home for this weekend, and looking forward to finishing up some knits. It's kind of what's going on. Just kind of regroup. It's been beautiful in LA. It's like we're having a very warm February, so it's been in the high 70s, low 80s, and so I have taken this opportunity this week to get back out to walking, which I'd gotten out of my exercise kick for probably about 6 weeks. So ever since I started my January travel, it kind of threw me off, and then I was sick, and so I haven't been moving as much as I want to. So this week I started like, I got to get out there. It's beautiful. And I live near some great parks, so I've gone hiking twice this week, and I'm hoping to hike tomorrow and one time this weekend. I realize that's my preferred way of exercise. I do some jogging. I might get back into running again when I feel up to it, but I still feel, because I'm a little sluggish, I've been out to it. You got to work up to it. But in the meantime, like when I hike, I do pretty steep hikes, and so I do get out of breath and tired. So I'm doing that, and I think that's it. So until next time, that's a wrap from Hollywood, where fantasy meets fiber and dreams are it. Bye, everybody.